So I wanted to start today with a question. I like starting off these things with questions. It sort of, makes you think. Hopefully it makes you think. Hopefully you don't just go, and instantly switch off. So today's question is, what does a normal church service look like? Pretend you didn't just sing some crazy songs and do some weird things. Or maybe normal's not a good word. What does your ideal church service look like? If you had to sort of close your eyes and picture a church service, what would be there? What would you see? What would you see? Would you see? What would you do there? Okay, has everyone got sort of a mental picture? Yeah? Okay. Next question. How many people does it need to make that happen? What you've just pictured in your head? About 76? Any advance on 76? Heather's got a full choir in her picture of a ideal church service? More than 5, okay? Certainly more than 5, somewhere between 5 and 76. Any advance on 76? Anyone want a full orchestra as well as the full choir? Oh, that'd be good, wouldn't it? Yeah. Like a good brass section or something. I'm going to move this out of the way, so I'm not going to use it. Oh, that's pretty radical, isn't it? Church services can be a bit mad, even when you think about sort of what we've done today. John on teas and coffees. Someone had to. Oh, I can say someone. I had to set up the tech. I got a preacher, worship leader. Maybe you'd have a full worship band rather than videos. You've got people welcoming people as they come in. Set up, pack down, kids work, response team. There's so many things. Even with such a small church, no matter how big your sort of what you visualized was, there's probably some measure of those things that would be required to make it a reality. And then if you had a choir and an orchestra and you had other things going on, then maybe that would require some extra people too. So why have I asked this? So this is what I think. It's like, is that okay? Is that healthy? And is that right? So just looking at how the church functioned in Acts and through the letters of the New Testament, did they have all that stuff? Is what we no, just straight up no. And have we massively overcomplicated church? People seem to be generally nodding, so that's good. So that's kind of what I felt like we've maybe done. And speaking to other church leaders and being at conferences and other things recently, it seems like the whole of sort of the Christendom world seems to be going, hey, why are we doing church like this? Is this a bit mad? So I want to sort of focus in on this verse really, or these verses, this as our central bit of scripture for today, which is from Matthew 11, 28 to 30. Is that readable, or is that too faint? Yeah, so Matthew 11, 28 to 30 says, Then Jesus said, Come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light. So when you think about, what Jesus is saying there about rest and not putting too much on your shoulders, and that just hands up if you think that sounds wonderful and chilled. Okay, hands up if you look at that and think, oh, that sounds stressful. I want nothing to do with that. Yeah, it just sounds nice, doesn't it? Jesus is saying, actually, hanging out with me is a good place to be. It should do you good. It shouldn't be a stressful, just hard time. Excuse me. I've still got a little bit of a tickly cough, so apologies for that. So Jesus, when he has a bit of a go at the Pharisees at one point, doesn't he? I've gone all in with my stick figures today. I'm quite happy. I spent a lot of time on my stick figures. But it says that the Pharisees, they crush people with unbearable religious demands and never lift a finger to ease the burden. So Jesus looks at the religious leaders of the time and says, "You're just putting so much on people. You're putting so much pressure and weight on people, and it's not good. It's not healthy." And can you see the little muhaha I put on there? That's fun. The Pharisees would, Jesus was like, hey, you're making people's lives tougher. The law, was there to help people, but you've taken it and made it into something that it wasn't meant to be, and people are getting weighed down and burdened by it. So there's the Pharisees, as opposed to Jesus, who took the entire weight of the law on himself, and it says he was crushed for our sins. He was beaten so we could be whole. Jesus, was perfect. He took the entire law on his shoulders on the cross and said, I'm taking this weight so you don't have to. So that's the gist of it. Jesus was crushed so we don't have to be. That is sort of one way of just looking at the gospel really simply. So that's great. Hands up or nodding or thumbs if you think that's good. Yeah, cool. Remember, for the people thinking not being crushed is good and Jesus is good for taking that for us. That's good. So then I think Sunday services, are they a massive boulder that is slowly crushing us to death? So certainly the models of church that are traditional, and even like with the small church, you think, that takes so many people to run that. Is that something that people are going to be slowly buckling under the pressure of? Even the guys who I speak to, Temple and like Lounge and those kind of guys, and Coyd, I speak to all those guys, and it seems like the same. They're bigger churches than us, and yet they say, we need more workers. We're stretched a bit thin, and I'm like, really? You guys are stretched thin, but you've got so much more people, and they feel like they're a little bit under the pressure of the Sunday service and things that are going on. So I was trying to work that out, and I just don't want that for us to be crushed by a heavy weight of what the traditional Sunday service looks like. Equally, I don't want to be crushed myself. There's a great bit in Exodus 18 where Moses' father-in-law turns up and says, "What are you doing? You've taken on too much. You're going to burn yourself out, and you're going to burn the people out too by doing this. This job is too heavy for you, a burden too heavy for you alone to carry by yourself." So instead of saying, this is the temptation is to go, I don't want to put stuff on you guys, and as such I go, it's all right, I'll carry it, and then I end up wrecked. And this is what's great about this verse. Is it says, if you burn yourself out, the people are going to get, not get the best of you. They're going to suffer for it too. And I've seen that there's so many church leaders I know who've in the last few years taken sabbaticals or just been completely burnt out or had, emotional breakdowns or all sorts of things because they've done too much. And I don't want that. So I don't want to put too much on you, but equally, I don't want to put too much on me because that's not going to be good. So it's important to say that Jesus does say, if any of you wants to be my follower, you must give up your own way, take up your cross, and follow me. If you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake, you will save it. So it's not that we shouldn't be carrying anything. Carrying weight is okay. Being crushed to death, not okay. So that makes sense. There's the weight that we're meant to carry. There's things Jesus has called us to do, things he's called us to give up, things he's asked us to sacrifice, and that, our cross that we're called to hold. But they are our crosses as well. Jesus doesn't say, pick up your cross and the guy just next to you cross and their cross as well, carry all 4 crosses on your back and let them swan off. But he also doesn't say, dump your cross on someone else. So we're responsible for whatever it is that God's called us specifically as individuals to carry. But when you look at sort of Jesus' issue with the Pharisees and them putting stuff on other people, I don't think Jesus is a fan of that. So there's this book that I was given a few years ago, really, called The Rabbit and the Elephant, Why Small is the New Big for Today's Church, which is very zingy, and I like the artiness of it. It's good. But the back cover basically says, if you put 2 elephants, so it's the idea of church as an elephant or church as a rabbit, and if you put 2 elephants in a room and leave them alone for a year, you might come back in a year's time and have 1 baby elephant. If you put 2 rabbits in a room and leave them alone for a year, you will come back to quite a few rabbits, because, rabbits. So the idea is that church that is simple is easily replicatable. If I was to say to any of you here, great, I want you to go launch a church somewhere else, and you need to do it like we do it here, you go, great, all I need is a preacher, a worship leader, someone to do teas and coffees, a host, someone to welcome, someone to set up, someone to sort out the PA, someone to work out the laptop, and suddenly you need like 8 to 10 people to make the thing work. Whereas if it's something simple, then it's easily replicatable. If it only takes like 2 people, and it's something simple in a simple format, you can replicate that anywhere. So that's the idea, is that for the church to be sort of more reproducible and replicatable and grow, being small isn't necessarily a bad thing, as that allows you some flexibility with that. So we went to New Wine Leaders Conference. Was that last weekend? Seems like a long time ago. Last weekend, and one of the things they said about the church in sort of New Testament times was that it was multiform, not uniform, in that sometimes we look back at a specific part of Scripture and go, that's what church was like. You know, they met in houses, that's how it was, the end. Or we'll look at another bit and go, they did this, you know, they sold everything they had and that was how we should live. They did this bit, they did that. But if you look at the whole, you can see that there's not one way of doing church in the New Testament. It's multiform, not uniform. There's very different ways of doing things, and none of them are sort of right or wrong. It's just different expressions. So that was one of the things that we took away. The guy who spoke on that was very sort of all over the place in a way that I kind of enjoyed, but Heather found difficult to follow. Yeah, I thought it was fun. So that was one of the things. And they didn't necessarily say exactly this, but that church is contextual and not copied. So often people will go away somewhere and come back and go, oh, I visited this church and they did this and it was brilliant. We should do that here. And sometimes that's fine. Certainly at like the New Wine thing, we heard some songs there and I thought, these are great. I'm nicking these. But equally, I'm not going to invite some preachers to come and preach that are going to cost thousands of pounds, put on a Sunday service for us in a massive venue for that to bankrupt the church and for it to be a big empty room. It would just not make sense. And if you had guys in a Welsh-speaking church over here who've got a really successful church, great, this has worked really well. But if they took that and did that in France, it probably wouldn't go so well because people don't speak. Well, as far as I'm aware, then there's no Welsh-speaking French bits. It does turn up in odd places occasionally, doesn't it? Brittany's a bit Welsh? Okay. Insert country for anecdote that makes sense here. But you can see, it's easy to sort of see something that works somewhere else and just try and lift it and shift it and go, oh, great, that will work here. And that's not always the case. Paul, when he was going around, would be like, he said about being all things to all people, like starting off where he was at. He'll be more Roman to the Romans and he'll be more Jewish to the Jews, just so he can translate to the context that he's in. And just thinking of sort of our history when we did the Eden stuff and we had our Eden team, that was very much a model that was established in cities. It was this is a great thing. You get a city that has poverty, and they set up these teams in specific neighborhoods, and they bless the community and that kind of thing, and that was great. And then we were pretty much their experiment, their guinea pig over here, weren't they? Where they tried to take this model that was designed for cities and do it in the Welsh valleys. And it didn't quite work, because in the cities they go, great poverty, oh no, oh look, right next door there's great wealth. There you go. They just redirect it and, they get the rich people to fund the work of the workers who are working with the poor people. But in the Welsh valleys, there's not great wealth and great poverty. It's just largely poverty. So it's not like you can do that. Where you have teams of, church leaders and stuff who are all employed full-time and on salaries and that kind of stuff. If I said to you guys, I'm going full-time next week, you've all got to pay me now, our church would be financially viable for what, like a month and a half? Maybe it just doesn't work. So there's, we need to make sure that it makes sense for our context, that what the church that we build in Rhydfelyn makes sense for Rhydfelyn. And then lastly is kingdom, not competition. So this is, again, something that's really been on my heart for the last year, I guess, maybe more. But like the work with the PCC guys and sort of the churches in the local area, it's lovely because we're all sort of side by side, arm in arm, going, go on, you got this, you can do this. And we're not competing, we're sort of encourage each other and with each other and, really want each other to succeed and the kingdom to grow in Ponty regardless of where it is. So there's those three things. So you now be asking, what are you going on about all this for, John? This is all very abstract. What are you doing with this? So I have a plan. Hopefully it's a cunning plan. It may just be a plan. And also, just in case you're watching online and you don't know who I am, my name is not Stan, it is John. But Excuse me. So here's the plan, because even just going to, there was a New Frontiers thing, and I was sharing a car with Grant from the New Frontiers Church in Swansea, and we were chatting the whole way there, and just talking about simplifying church, because we've made it this big monster, and it's tiring people out. He was saying that they have one Sunday a month where they just do no service and that kind of stuff, and I was like, I don't know about that. But I've come up with the help of Heather and Andy and Stacey and Graham Anna and some chatting with other people, a plan. And this is the plan. It's not all radical. So the first is all age services. So we've been doing this once a month. The plan is for that not to change. So this is probably the least interesting, I guess, of the things. But we do this because Jesus says, let the little children come to me, don't hinder them. And says, we're to be like children in that regards. Jumping around and singing and having fun is that's nice, isn't it? It is all age. It's not a kid's service. Is worshipping God with our whole bodies, not just our vocal cords, and doing something practical to help us remember the message of the day, which is not just for kids. That's good for all of us. Has anyone got any strawberry plants going? Yeah? Okay. Oh, yeah, you got a plant. Yeah, that's true. So that's good. So that's not going to change. So that will be the second Sunday of every month. And that's good because, again, we use the videos, so I get to rest my arms from playing guitar, which is great. Then the following Sunday, which if you're tracking this is today, is our Communion Sunday. So in that service, we're going to do communion. We're going to have a talk by me, and we're going to do what we've done today and reuse the videos from the previous Sunday, so that if anyone comes along on an all-age service and then comes along the following week, it's not completely foreign to them and they know what's going on. And again, that means I don't have to play guitar that week and I get to just do one thing and not both things. So pretty much today will look how that's going to look, because we're going to do communion in a bit. Then we're going to have Guest Sunday. So this will be one Sunday a month we'll get someone from the outside to come in and preach. So that will be Andrew or Mays, Simon Walker we've got coming next week. Raf was quite the hit, so I'm sure we'll get him to come back at some point. But in theory, just because I know at one point we had visiting speakers almost like 2-3 times a month, and that was a bit much to ask on them, because again, don't want to put too much weight on other people. But once a month, so finding 12 friends who can preach and teach well and getting them to say, can you do one this year, is not mad. So that'll be good. Oh, and for that one, it will be me on actual guitar playing, or Sam, if Sam's around, playing live worship, as it is. So that will be sort of more of a traditional-looking Sunday service, I guess. And the fourth one will be Simple Sunday. Do you like a little rabbit? Thank you. So that's taking the idea of sort of the elephant and the rabbit and saying, let's just do a Sunday. This is really, really simple. So what I'm hoping to use for that is there's something called Discovery Bible Study. Lucy's nodding. That's good. Anyone else come across this, Discovery Bible Study? It's an awkward acronym as well, because it's also DBS, which makes it sound really miserable and admin-y. But it's this idea of just looking at a passage in the Bible, discussing it together, and there's some sort of set predefined questions that you say, sort of like, where's God in this story? What does it tell us about humanity? And then the best bit about it is it says, what are you going to do with this? And you sort of work out yourself, knowing this now, that means I want to do this or change this or that kind of thing. And then next time we meet up, we go, how did it go? Did you manage to start attending a running club? Did you get to the pub quiz? Did you tell your friend at work about Jesus? Did you pray more often, read my Bible? Whatever it is, and just go, how did it go? And not in a sort of really oppressive way, but in a just sort of, it'd be good to share and discuss how it's gone. So it's just going to be quite simple, but hopefully quite fun and good. So that's that. And then sometimes there's a fifth Sunday, but I don't know how this falls into it. But there'll be some Sundays, like in 2 weeks' time, on the 30th, where we'll just meet up with the other churches in the Ponty area and just have a mega mash-up Sunday. So I think the plan is to do that once every 8 weeks. Yeah? Something like that. That's certainly, I think, what we pitched, and I think other people seem to be all right with that. So we'll be going around the various churches, I imagine, doing that, but just that'll be an evening full of live worship and prayer. So if you've listened to that plan and gone, we're not going to have quite as much live worship, it's great because we'll make up for it by having some epic all together times of live worship and singing together and praising God to make up for it. So in theory, that means, because I know at one point seemed to be that I was leading worship and preaching on a Sunday for multiple weeks in a row, and that's for me not sustainable. But equally, I don't want to put anything on you guys or on the guys around in the churches and make their life even more difficult. So how does that sound? Does that sound okay? Yeah? Cool. And obviously, it's changeable. If something doesn't work, we'll change it. Or if we're missing something, then we'll mix it up. But that is the plan. Stan. Just coming back to me, it's because I read the word me there. Coming back to this start, about the Jesus being full of rest, a place where you can rest, who is humble and gentle, whose yoke is easy and whose burden is light. That's sort of what I want people to feel like with church, that it's not a stress or a hassle or an extra thing, but actually it's just somewhere they get to come and be and enjoy God, look at the Bible, get prayer and praise and encourage one another. So that's it. Back to this, Jesus ultimately, bore the weight of the law on his shoulders so we don't have to be crushed by it. So I figured that's sort of a good thought to sort of rest on as we do communion. So I think Heather's prepared